We'll start with Josh.
Josh Verity, I'm the Conservation Administrator.
Denise Schultz, Commissioner.
Michael Mercier.
Commissioner.
Jean O'Neill. Carol Melanson.
Okay,
Sandy Slavin.
great.
Autumn Wood.
Hello.
And I'm Adrienne Lennon. I'm a senior ecologist with BSC Group and environmental planner. I do ordinance and bylaw about 20% of my workload, and most recently just finished up with my colleague Jillian Davies publishing an entire index of regulatory revisions and bylaw revisions as part of an MVP funded project in Bolton and Clinton, wherein we essentially reviewed every standing local ordinance, bylaw, and regulation in the Commonwealth and put it on a website. And it's a lot to read, but we do have a very large spreadsheet and many samples to work with, and also great reference material for bringing in better standards, better definitions, more clarity to procedure, and performance standards for regulations for the local. So something that is really important to us is trying to make sure we're advancing wetlands protection at the local level, at the municipal level, especially in the event of the most recent Supreme Court decision, which really puts a lot of resource area outside of the jurisdiction of the federal government. And of course, you know, we rely on the Wetlands Protection Act to do a lot for us, but things can change there too. And so making sure that you're protecting yourself at the local level to the best of your ability is what we're here to try to make sure everybody is able to do. There's a lot to cover and a lot of different interest areas depending on a municipality, which is why I wanted to come down and really talk a little bit about it and talk about how you're structured as a municipality in terms of what the Conservation Commission is administering as opposed to what the Planning Board is administering, or any other entity that's in the community that maybe is taking on things like stormwater and you're not necessarily doing that. And then also, you know, try to identify pain points, places where, you know, there's just a constant challenge for the commission, and what are those challenges? Why do they happen? What ends up being appealed? Why is it being appealed? I know certain cases it's a neighborhood thing, but in other cases, you know, you need to have better language or more clarity in your special conditions under an order for the local to be able to really achieve whatever that regulatory standard is that you're trying to rely upon in the event of an appeal and also the event of enforcement. Any questions?
No.
Everything I said?
Have you looked at ours?
I have. Yep.
Have you looked at the cases we won and lost?
I have seen some of it, and I've heard a little bit about it from Josh. I'm happy to hear more from everybody, and I'm interested in, you know, where you think you can grow from that. And I think there are definitely places where you can overlay some local authority and avoid that in the future.
So with the, should I say, easing up of the federal protection of the wetland bylaws, did I hear that? That the federal government has eased?
Yeah, so the Stackler decision has completely eliminated IVWs from federal jurisdiction.
And does that fall to the state?
Yes.
And our state is strong?
Our state does not regulate IVW. It does acknowledge it as a resource area.
And therefore we regulate resource area.
You do not regulate, you regulate the IVW, but the size of the IVW, you know, depending on its size, you may not be able to impact it. And the resource areas that are most affected by the decision are vernal pools, because they're very small. Right.
We don't have that many in town, maybe 4.
Well, that's good. Certify them, and then you're
They are.
probably in okay
Yep.
shape. Good. Yeah. Great.
So then the state, and then we can be more stricter.
That's absolutely right, in
Okay.
most cases. Something we'll talk about a little bit later is about a floodplain ordinance or a floodplain overlay and what you can and can't do there. We can't be more restrictive than the building code, but there are some things that the Conservation Commission can do that extends the boundary of what the WPA calls land subject to coastal storm flowage. You have to assign it a different name. You can't also call it land subject to coastal storm flowage, but you can actually do a predicted overlay even to 2030 and 2070 and say, you know, anybody who's operating in that area is within the jurisdiction of the commission. You can't necessarily assign a wide variety of performance standards to that overlay because you run up against the building code and you can't be more strict than the building code. So, but we can talk about that. And if the commission is interested in doing that, I tell you, I worked in Gloucester for many, many years and we built a floodplain ordinance and it was a really nice, very, very well-written piece of legislation, and it just fell absolutely on its face in front of the city council because it's a coastal community and absolutely nobody wanted to be restricted from their ability to build as far out as they possibly could. So
I know that with our 30-foot and 50-foot no-activity zone, there was a lot of pushback by at least one or two selectmen that we were denying the homeowner access to his property. We were taking it away from him, but fortunately for us, it passed at town meeting.
yes.
Yes, so.
Yeah. And that is often the pushback is, you know,
Maybe we're lucky that a lot of coastal owners are not residents and therefore not subject to voting at town meeting.
yeah, I mean,
Yes.
that can work to your advantage.
advantage, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, and something to consider when you're thinking about what you want to try to advance is who does it most impact, how was their buy-in, you know, so, interesting.
So I just want to talk a little bit about the time frame that we have because it's pretty tight. So today is our workshop where we're going to discuss a lot. The select board has a meeting on August 29th. I thought I may attend that meeting to kind of give them a short version of what we talked about here, how I feel the commission is receptive to those, you know, additions or revisions, and you know, kind of get their opinion on everything that we talk about. Our next public hearing is September 6th. Maybe that would be a good time for us, maybe an hour or so before our public hearing to meet and kind of finalize some of what we talked about today, or if we have more discussion, that might be a good time for that. Then the select board meets on the 12th, so maybe I can bring them some type of finalized, you know, what we have going on. And then the warrant is due on September 18th. And I've been told that they want to avoid having a placeholder article as much as possible, and if that's where we get to at that point, it wouldn't be favorable for us. So-
Josh, do we have to vote on these revisions that we want to make to our bylaws as the Conservation Commission? Or is it just, we meet, we put it all together, and it just goes without a vote?
I think we bring it to town meeting.
Okay.
I strongly recommend we vote to submit a warrant article.
Right, which we can do at our September 6th.
Yep.
Okay, because I will not be in attendance on September 6th.
It's also possible I'm maybe late for that 1 hour. I may just make it on time for
Okay.
6:30. As far as 5:30 goes, that might be a little tight.
Well, we'll just make the vote at our public hearing, so Mike, it seems like you would have no problem getting to that.
Okay.
And
You're talking about the Conservation Commission meeting? All right, because I wouldn't be at that either.
So that would just be a vote to submit a warrant article to change the bylaws. That would not be really a vote to approve the, that would have to be a vote to approve the wording. Or to place it on the warrant.
And if you're more familiar with some of how town protocol goes, your input is value
Yeah.
appreciated, because I'm less familiar with the entire process.
They may not like placeholders, but they let other departments put in placeholders all the time,
Yeah,
especially those associated with bylaw changes.
Right.
and if we get to a point before we submit, or even after we submit the article and we feel that it may be met with a lot of resistance from the town, maybe we consider postponing until the spring town meeting.
Yeah.
But
Well, so, and just to jump on that point and just thinking about timeline and workload and things like that and the commission's ability to consider things, often and most commissions do have the ability to promulgate their own regulations. So front loading, just focusing on the bylaw itself and making sure it's incorporated into the bylaw, that the commission has the ability to promulgate their own regulations, allows us to only focus on what actually needs to be approved before City Hall or before Town Hall and before the town meeting, and not actually expanding the entire discussion around what the performance standards would be.
So you would recommend that we would review the bylaw and leave the rules and regulations alone?
Oh, we will need to update those as well.
Yeah, but not part of
The warrant.
this warrant.
Right,
So there's really two components of our existing bylaw.
right,
The bylaw themselves and rules and regulations. We talked earlier about removing the rules and regulations and making it its own document,
that's right.
which means we can change as needed. So if we focus on bylaw, then we can focus on what, we can say which pieces come out for rules and regulations, and then work on wordsmithing that component.
Right.
Right. And I've expressed this to the commission before, the regulation part of our bylaw is really where we've been handcuffed, where it says we're only able to change the applications of filings in the filing fees. Where other towns have it, without that second half of the sentence,
Right.
so.
Most communities have the ability to the commission has the ability to promulgate their own regulations, and they have a requirement to review and update them, usually it's on the cycle of the commission, so if you have a 3-year appointment, then it's on a 3-year appointment of the commission cycle. So every 3 years, you have to review and update your regulations in the event that you want to change something.
And that can be done by the commission?
Yeah, so you assign yourself the authority to promulgate your own regulations.
Would we do that at town meeting?
That's what you do at town meeting.
So that's one warrant article.
I think the warrant article would just state, we're proposing to revise the bylaw.
Right.
And that would be one of the revisions. And
So
there might
then-
be more encompassed in it, but we aren't gonna really get into changing or adding regulations in the warrant article.
No. So we'll focus on a bylaw change, knowing that rules and regulations will be if it gets approved, that we will then be in control of our own. We would have to make a bylaw change, and that would have to be reviewed at town meeting. Once that's approved at town meeting, we then have the authority to make our rules and regulations.
That's right,
Correct.
separate document.
Okay. So we need to focus on right now bylaw changes for fall town meeting.
Right.
Okay, Josh, what are the bylaws? I have a tough time separating a bylaw from a rule and regulation. Is there some component of our bylaw that is
Well, I think-
subject to town meeting?
Well, our entire bylaw is subject to town meeting, but, I think when I look at our bylaw, I look at, where we have inland structures, coastal structures, the buffer zone, things like that. Those will be pulled out of our bylaw and put into the rules and regulations document.
Right.
So really, our bylaw would just really be, and I don't even know if, do we need to include definitions within the bylaw, or should it be?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, there are some sections that would need to stay, and like our definition section, that would be greatly improved upon.
Right,
Um,
I think that needs to be improved.
right.
The definitions by far.
Right, so the thing you want to really focus on in the bylaw is the definitions section and the statement of jurisdiction.
right.
All right.
Because at the end of your definitions and statement of jurisdiction, the rest of the bylaw largely talks about procedure, and the procedure of the commission is essentially the same as the Wetlands Protection Act and 310 CMR, regardless of whether you like it or not. You can you can assign in the procedures the requirement of, for example, if you created a local notice of intent form and had a cover sheet on that form that had a checklist of items that needed to be submitted as part of a notice of intent application or as part of a request for determination application, that you could include in your bylaw under procedures that checklist be completed, for example. But that's kind of all you can add to procedure, because everything else is either subject to appeals to Superior Court, which is set forth by your charter, or by the Commonwealth and statute, or it is directly following in line with the Wetlands Protection Act, wherein you have 21 days to open the hearing, 21 days to issue the permit. You really can't, the only thing that you would do to move away from that would be to make it a shorter timeline, and that's not something you want to do to your conservation agent.
Yeah,
So-
please don't do that.
I don't want to take up a whole lot of time here, and this is an issue Carol had already discussed, but how do like other towns or whatever done their definitions? Because as she mentioned a few minutes ago, you read through like a good 3/4 of the document, your brain's already fried, then you get to the definitions, and it's like your brain's already like disastrous.
It is hard, yeah.
And you're like, you try reading those definitions, and you're like, whatever, and you want to close the document at that point. So like, how do like other towns do it? I don't.
So, Josh, you have examples from other towns. They must have a definition section. Can we cut and paste?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Well,
I have a whole index
that's
of, that's why
yeah.
I'm here, is
Well,
because I've
wait
been
a
through
minute,
all of them.
We're not now, we wouldn't be, we're not like illegally copying now by like
Oh,
doing
no,
that,
no,
are we?
no, no, no.
Okay.
No.
No, I don't think there's any
There's
copyright
no
rules in the
copyright
definition
rules.
section.
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, for applicants and for commissions, it's better if everybody's language is the same, because everyone agrees on what the definition of an isolated vegetative wetland is, and everybody agrees upon what the definition of a vernal pool is, and things like that. Everybody agrees upon the definition of a 200-foot buffer zone. It's,
When can we get your master definition list, or does Josh already have it?
I'd like to send it to you probably by early next week. It's a Word document that I can just run through, and you can pick the ones that you like and include them all or none. Not all of them are necessarily going to apply to you. The one thing that we will have to talk about a little bit more, or at least have some back and forth about, is, like I said, that floodplain overlay. That is really leading edge policy for wetlands protection and storm damage prevention and flood protection. And different communities have named them different things based on what their definition goals are. So some communities approach the floodplain and advancing the floodplain as a requirement for providing climate resilience, which actually holds up a little bit better in Superior Court because there's so much science behind that. Then other terms, some people do it for stormwater and some do it just because of sea level rise, but sea level rise is something that is a little bit of a fluid calculation still. And by that I mean, it's not a matter of whether or not the sea is rising, it's a matter of by how much.
Well, one more chunk coming off Antarctica is going to bring it up there quicker.
Right. I mean, we are here for sure. But I can tell you that by making a definition of an interest, for example, a new interest, you have significant interest under the Act. If you make the definition of a new interest, and that interest is specifically related to climate resilience, then you can refer to that interest in your definition of what your floodplain overlay is, right? So what is the purpose of making that definition? It is to serve this interest, and you define that interest as well. That's the most structured and stable way to get that to hold up when you make a decision based on that resource area. And, in coastal communities, when you make a definition of that resource area, the city of Boston just recently did this, and they went out to 2070. They have two overlays, a 2030 overlay and a 2070 overlay. The impact of jurisdiction is extraordinary. It's really a lot.
It's all of Boston.
There's a lot of fill. It's a lot. And they have it in their ordinance. They are not able to, and this is important because of the building code, they're not able to establish really stringent performance standards attached to that, except for compensatory flood storage, elevation by elevation. So in the event of a flood, or if you are going to do a cut fill, then you have to be able to provide that similar elevation. But you can't necessarily force it, well, you absolutely can't force a building, for example, to be raised. You can do things like prohibit an expansion of footprint on a single-family home or on any other structure.
Without raising,
No, I mean, you can just,
you can't, okay.
you can do a prohibition of expansion of the footprint. I will tell you that has failed everywhere except for one place, and that is in Gloucester, where we did move the no expansion of the footprint, but only in the velocity zone, and those are homes that are basically in the ocean already. So it's a difficult one to move, you know, so there are a couple of different ways that you can approach it if that's what you're trying to really gain. So there's kind of two sides of this. One side is just reorganizing your bylaw and regulations in a way that allow you to have more flexibility on what you're regulating in your decision-making process, and review and promulgate as you need to according to what it is that you're trying to impact. I know that you have a dock pier ongoing, you know, relationship with the ocean. So, you know, there's an opportunity there to say this worked in this condition, and, you know, we're going to try to, implement some regulations around dock and pier size, largely is usually what people are able to get away with in terms of applying that back to climate resilience or the impact of habitat, land under the ocean, and things like that. But you may decide that that's not even manageable because you're not able to process a single dock pier permit, right? And every single one of them goes into appeals. And that's not a place that you want to go to either, but you're leaving yourself the regulatory opportunity to review that every 3 years and make the change. One thing to be aware of is that when you're promulgating your own regulations, if you make a prior authorization, then that can hamstring you a little bit, right? So sometimes you want to just start at a place that's not necessarily 100% most restrictive. You want to start at like 30% and advance it as you go over time with like a long range plan to address things, as opposed to going all the way out and then having to pull back, because then you find yourself in a little bit of trouble in court, right? So that's kind of the first part of the effort here, is to divide the two things and only take to town meeting exactly what needs to go to town meeting. And then the other part of it is about making these definitions, incorporating all of these definitions, which are a lot of standard language and should be easy enough to do, and then assigning to them the jurisdiction that you really want to try to tackle in those definitions. So the floodplain or the floodway or an expansion on bordering land subject to flooding, that might be where you really want to try to expand your jurisdiction in this cycle. And that's what you're going to take forward to the town meeting to allow you to regulate. Your regulatory capacity is, again, limited by the building code. So in most cases, that just means identifying the resource area as part of your submission and providing an alternatives analysis. Those are the most successful performance standards that you can then assign in your regulations. Questions, thoughts?
Okay.
I don't want to talk the whole time. I want to hear from
So,
you.
I'm thinking that town meeting, we need an article just for definitions. No ands or buts about it, just an article for definitions.
But we also want to accomplish the
Okay.
changing of the regulation language.
Okay, then that's definitions. Another article for removing the rules and regulations out of the bylaw.
You'll keep it in, but you will assign yourself the ability to promulgate
Right.
regulations.
I guess it would probably be changing what our regulations currently says.
But see, if we give ourselves authority to make the change, we can do the change at any time.
Yes.
But if we can get into if we can get to town meeting, part of the bylaw rewrite are to give us the ability to manage our rules and regulations, that's a big win.
Yes.
That will then give us time to do rules and regulations regardless, not on a town meeting timeline.
Right.
Right.
And just so we're all clear, our current regulations say, after public notice and hearing, the commission shall promulgate rules and regulations to effectively effectuate the purpose of the bylaw, effective when voted and filed with the town clerk. Failure of the commission to promulgate such rules and regulations or legal declaration of their invalidity by a court of law shall not act to suspend or invalidate the effect of the bylaw. And then this is where we get
I did not understand anything you said.
No, it's like, the language is absolutely ridiculous.
I don't know.
Yeah.
For us to understand and for the general
But
public
what
to
did that,
understand.
what you just read, what does that say?
That is what gives the commission the ability to create their own rules and regulations.
So it's already in there.
Ours goes on to say, these regulations shall be limited to administrative matters, including but not limited to procedure governing the amount of filing fees and the submittal requirements for applications.
So that's where the restriction
Comes in.
has
So-
to be modified.
Our article should basically be to strike the second half of our regulations, right? Would that accomplish what we're trying to do?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we can say that article number, whatever that page or section is, will be modified to remove the following.
Right,
Well, yeah, I mean, you're gonna remove the regs from the bylaw altogether.
But
right.
we're not there yet.
Right. Not, well, so you have it in your bylaw, you're gonna strike all of it and take it out. So
Right.
the bylaw language is freestanding from the regulation
What,
language.
so
And
that
that-
section stays in our bylaw with that modification or gets removed all?
Just that
No,
sentence, but
just-
everything that follows is removed,
Right.
right?
So the second half of my sentence or paragraph gets removed, and maybe we consider removing our coastal docks, buffer zone, inland docks into our regulations in this article as well. So it'd be definitions, strike part of the regulation section, move some of our regulations.
Do you think we can get it all done for us September 6th?
Yeah.
Yeah, because if it's just the definition should stay in the bylaw, so
Mhm.
once we get
Updated with the new list.
yeah, so I think that's something we could easily do
And
by
maybe the
September
flood,
6th.
yeah, maybe the floodplain overlay waits until we feel more comfortable with what to do. Because you
you-
just gave us a lot on it.
I know, yeah. Well, you have to decide if you wanna incorporate an overlay for floodplain in this bylaw, and I'll say this, some communities do that separately. They just have a floodplain overlay bylaw that's separate, so that but it's still administered by the Conservation Commission, and so you can leave it off for now. However, I do recommend incorporating the definitions and the interests that you would be referencing in the floodplain bylaw
When,
in your conservation wetland ordinance or bylaw, because then you have the ability to refer to either.
yeah, put it in the
Right.
definition, even though we may not use that word right now.
Right.
But for Ken, does the
Yeah,
planning board and zoning have anything called a floodplain overlay or anything like that?
Yes, there is, in the zoning bylaw, there's a floodplain overlay bylaw.
So, but we can't be more restrictive than the zoning bylaw for a floodplain overlay.
That's true, but you
Okay.
can have your own, and although I imagine if there's already one on the planning side, then they're probably not going to go for a second one. However, I would still encourage you to include those definitions.
Yeah, the definition includes everything, even though we may not use those words at this time.
Yeah. Because if they pull it back on the planning side, you still have the opportunity to incorporate it on this side, and you can also include it in your regulations if you're promulgating your own regulations.
So
So,
what are we doing so far for fall town meeting?
We'll try that again in layman's terms?
Definitions.
Definitions,
Thank you.
Modifying our responsibility.
our regulation section,
Regulation to remove the last,
it's like the last
How many
sentence or two.
Last sentence.
huh?
Yeah.
It's like the last sentence or two. It would be, remove.
Starting
These
with,
regulations shall be limited to administrative matters, including but not limited to, da-da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
Yeah, I imagine for our article to town meeting, we're gonna have to basically have our bylaw with what we're striking from it,
yes,
any additions.
Right,
that's-
there'll be a red line.
Right, that will be
Right.
submitted to the AG after it gets voted on.
so we're removing that line. We're putting in the full section of definition, whether or not we use the words at this time. And what else would you put into a fall town meeting article?
Any changes you want to make to your statement of jurisdiction. So if you're aiming to assign a buffer zone to isolated vegetated wetland, if you're aiming to expand the buffer zone to 200 feet, for example, if you're aiming to expand riverfront area to 300 feet, if you're aiming to protect vernal pools, if you're aiming to expand the floodplain or floodway and bordering land subject to flooding or isolated land subject to flooding, you got to include that all in.
Or we do it at another town meeting? Josh, are any of those on your scope right now to do for fall?
Not necessarily. I am not against the idea, but I guess,
We don't have time to wordsmith it.
well, let's ask our consultant. Is that,
Yeah, I
does
mean.
this seem totally out of the realm of things to accomplish for our fall town meeting?
No, I
or-
mean, you just tell me what you want to include in your jurisdiction. I have language for it. That's all. So if you want to expand your jurisdiction pursuant to the new definitions that you're going to be approving, then this is the time to do it.
Okay, can you give us,
How effectively have other towns expanded their jurisdiction?
Very effectively, yeah. In Metro West, there are communities that have like a 400-foot buffer zone to vernal pools and
it's different than our 50?
200-foot, yeah. I mean, not just the no disturb, right, and the no build, no disturb, but they go way out, 200 feet from any resource area larger than a bordering vegetated wetland. And you can have jurisdiction for slope grades greater than 8%. Then you have to have I have actually one right now that's slope grade 8 or greater than 8% is a 500-foot buffer zone from the resource area. So,
Which, again,
yeah,
suggesting
you
some
just
of
take the
these,
whole town,
suggesting some of the,
about it,
I just want to be able to say no to everything.
suggesting some of these things in the similar article may be
No, no, no.
dangerous.
You could very well have that whole article fail with that type of restriction being proposed.
Right.
So you're definitely looking at a separate article to expand our jurisdiction. Because I don't want to risk the
Right.
definition and the stating our responsibilities. I don't want to risk that section, because
So splitting it up so that we don't get denied off of
everything gets.
buffer zone increase
Yes.
versus,
Because there will be a lot
separation.
of pushback on this type of massive change
Oh,
to our
mhm.
our jurisdiction.
Sure,
It was
definitely.
bad enough getting the 30 and 50 in.
Yeah,
And I
Okay.
mean,
all true, yeah.
even in the floodplain, I just think about, kind of how Falmouth does it, where they don't necessarily say you can't expand, but there is some type of trade-off. Like, Falmouth says you can expand within the flood zone, but you have to put in mitigation plantings at a
Yeah.
1-to-1 ratio.
I mean, we've not been really good about our mitigation.
I mean, we don't really have anything in our bylaw about it anyway.
Well,
require
we
it,
have
right?
forced some entities.
Yeah, I have seen some of the COCs that have come in front of us where you guys have forced the planting of mitigation.
Yeah.
But,
But I guess if push comes to shove, we would have lost in court.
it's possible,
Yeah, I mean, if they didn't want to do the plantings.
So we're looking at a section for removing that sentence and definition, that's one one article. Another article for the statement of jurisdiction, and you, Andrea, right?
Adrienne, yes.
Adrian,
That's okay.
you will send Josh something so he can present to us
Before the 6th, I imagine?
Oh, yeah.
for the statement of jurisdiction.
And I'm curious to know, what are, this is the conversation around, like, what are the big sticking points for the commission? Is it dock pier float arrays? Is it marinas? Is it Division of Marine Fisheries? Is it,
More
Or is it-
so docks around here.
you have docks, yeah, I thought so. And what are we really aiming to do in the dock pier float world?
So,
Limit the size?
well, currently, right now, our regulations state that the commission should deny any docks within shellfish habitat deemed by DMF or our shellfish, our harbor master, our shellfish constable. The commission has allowed docks in certain areas that have shellfish habitat. I mean, if you look at this shellfish suitability layer that DMF uses to create their letters, it's like 85% of Wareham.
I know, yeah,
So-
I did look at that,
I mean,
yeah.
right now, the commission should just be denying almost every dock that comes in front of them. And I, it's,
fine.
it's,
Talk to this one right
Go
here.
for it.
I mean, we-
seriously, I mean,
we have one in court, kind of based on that, and it was a little bit more because there was a cumulative effect of multiple docks going into one bay as well. But we do have a win under shellfish suitability.
But there's plenty more pending, coming to court.
So,
Then there's 3 or 4 more.
Appeals for docks that
yeah,
you denied.
so
Yeah.
there was an appeal for a dock that was denied, that was just seen in front of a judge in early August, so we're expecting some type of, outcome, some
Okay.
type of decision on that shortly.
And you're making the denial based on the Division of Marine Fisheries overlay presence of.
Yeah, off of their letter that
Habitat.
says that it's,
plus the cumulative effect in the area. That was part
did
of
we
the
deny
area.
him on that one
Yeah.
as well? Okay.
If we could
So-
start to get some of the docks, we have it set now that they can go out to 200 feet, and everybody is pushing for that 200 feet. If we could limit it to the depth that they need, or the 200 feet, whichever is shorter kind of thing. So we're not having these really long docks going out into public
Catwalks.
water.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the water belongs to the public, not to the person who lives on the shore.
Yeah, I mean, nobody owns deep water, it belongs to the
Correct.
Commonwealth, right?
And I'd like to keep that as accessible to the public as possible.
Okay. So people are, the problem is the installation of catwalks that prevent the public's ability to pass and repass along the shoreline between mean high water and deep water, right?
So-
We require passage underneath.
That's part of the chapter 91
Yeah,
regulations
so
already.
it's not just us, it's, you have to
So-
allow.
I think what Denise is trying to get at is in our current regulations, we have a requirement for 24 inches below the lowest member of the boat to be above the ground.
Right,
And what normally what we see is people go 200 feet, and regardless of what water depth they're at 200 feet. I
okay.
think what Denise would like to see is as soon as you meet the water depth requirement, that's
That's where you start.
that's the limit of how far your dock can expand.
Right, so if it's 60 feet, that's as far as you go.
Right.
Correct.
Right, so that's.
Right, would that be
Yes.
kind of what you would like to see?
And we do have a
Definitely.
regulation that the dock must have so many square feet, so we can't be that wide or long or something like that. What, 300?
The float at the end of the dock is limited to 300 square feet.
Right. And you haven't had any problem with that,
I don't, no float size.
that's great.
You know, just the length of the pier.
Length of the piers.
Right.
And also, wasn't there, something from the state that says we don't specify whether it's significant shellfish habitat? And something we recently,
They started,
Okay.
the stuff that comes from the AG's office now is including more of significant shellfish. They've changed their wording.
yeah, because we got a letter from somebody saying that we don't indicate whether it's significant.
The AG's
It's
office
like-
does. because they've changed the wording
Yeah.
recently.
I mean,
They
so-
didn't in the past, and that's where we had a problem, because they didn't say that it was significant shellfish, and our area of concern is significant shellfish.
Right,
Now they are including that in more of it.
okay.
Wait, who said this?
AG's office, they weren't including that.
You mean the Division of Marine
Well,
Fisheries?
Division of
Yes.
Marine Fisheries, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, well, we had a single issue with that, and that was because the shellfish overlay that they used,
Right.
there's an error in how their overlay is cast onto the map. So, the
Their
letter that she
overlays are-
sent
Yeah.
didn't, say significant, it said, whatever it was, but it was clearly a mapping issue.
Right.
The overlay includes land.
I talked to her and
Right.
she almost
Revised the
immediately
letter.
revised the letter. And she went like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and sent us a new letter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You
So-
showed me that, I remember
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? We're saying we're looking right now at 2 articles.
Okay, on jurisdiction, beyond dock pier float, are there other types of activities that are near shore that concern you or that you have a regular problem with, like increase of footprint, people tearing down small cottages and building castles, or increase in impervious area?
Have we
and-
had an issue with footprint? We don't say how many feet they can go up. That's another board's responsibility, but we really have not allowed footprints bigger than what already exist. We haven't had anything fought.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an opportunity here for you to almost structure the bylaw in a way that says, the applicant can't move any closer than, the primary structure or pre-existing structure, so. But I think your 30-foot no disturb zone kind of covers that covers that anyway.
Because we really haven't permitted things that exceeded the footprint all the way around. Most of the time, we say you stay within your footprint.
And we've made people remove things, like there was that patio that was put in
Yep.
that encroached, it was bigger, and we knew it was bigger because we had pictures that they had expanded the patio and we made it be
Yeah.
removed because it was in the no activity zone.
Yeah,
There's a
so
paver.
I think your 30-foot no activity zone covers a lot of maybe the coastal concerns that a lot of other communities have.
Now,
We
what
also have
about
to-
with coastal erosion? I mean, that's gonna move your buffer zones, in your no activity zones. If you're, when you do the build, and 10 years later, you've lost 5 feet of your property because of erosion, we can't tell them they can't replace their little patio that was approved as long as it stays within the footprint, correct? Even though it is now in the 30-foot no activity zone. Because it wasn't when it was originally built, and it's cracked and it wants to be replaced.
I
You
think
know,
That
to
comes
make
under
it,
the
you know.
disturbed area, though.
Yeah, I
doesn't
was
it?
about to
We've been covering
say,
it
I
under
was gonna
disturbed
say,
area.
sometimes,
Yeah,
like,
because I
in the
mean,
past.
sooner or later, it's gonna come right up to their door, you know.
I was thinking with
realistically.
septic systems in the past, we've allowed septic systems to be built within a no activity zone.
Because they have to be.
Because they have to, and it was built there in the past.
Yeah, I mean, Shangri-La area, Glen Charlie Road,
You guys
their lots are so
haven't-
small, they have no choice but to put their septic where they can put it, or put it where it was. And
There's a
it's
whole
too
thing
close
coming
to
up now
pond.
with the septic systems
Do they do
too.
tight tanks?
I don't know what they're doing.
Probably,
They're
probably
talking
in that
about,
area, they're forced to.
There's a
Yeah.
couple
By the Board of Health.
above ground tanks.
But they have no other option but to no longer have a property because their septic has failed and it has to be done and it's on a pond. So,
yeah, but they're talking
Something
about
we have
that
to
area now being tied into the sewer system too. There's been a whole
oh, I know, I read
thing in the
that article.
newspaper, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the commission
don't
as
think
a
that is
whole
any-
has not
Not
had
in
a
our
problem
lifetime. Yeah.
with grandfathering things that have already been
Right.
there. Like, for example, the patio that would be reconstructed. You've never had an issue with saying now the reconstruction of the patio should be smaller because it's in the
Right.
30-foot.
Right,
You've always kind of allowed what was there to remain where it is.
right.
Right. Can we pull
And I
back
think
to
that
the
needs to
docks
be
one more
made
second
clear.
though? We've gotten off on this other tangent. Can we hit eelgrass within the docks? Can we remove the word beds?
Just
Just
any stand,
eelgrass.
yeah.
Yes, we denied a dock because there was one sprig of eelgrass
We didn't
attached.
deny it.
No,
We
we
should have
did-
denied it.
We gave him a dock because there was one sprig of eelgrass attached to
The fires,
It was
fire
the
dock.
start of an eelgrass bed. There was eelgrass growing, we're not gonna get into arguing about it here.
So,
Eelgrass was started. That bed now will not flourish and will not expand because we allowed the dock.
Well, it's gonna float away because it's attached to a patch of
You
seaweed.
can't prove that to me, that was attached to seaweed. There was eelgrass there.
yeah, we used the word bed of eelgrass as opposed to one sprig of eelgrass.
You know, I'm starting to put it together a little bit now that I've talked to a few applicants, and I think Bourne's moratorium on docks has forced more dock construction in Wareham, because people wanna come down to the Cape, but they want a dock as well.
So they bought in Wareham.
So they bought in Wareham to construct a dock. I think Bourne actually listed their moratorium, but
They did, but they didn't get the rash of docks that they expected.
not
Not
yet. People
The
probably
engineer-
don't know it's been
Well, the
listed.
engineers are probably too busy to do it, yeah, but
Okay.
what else should we be concerned about?
We're talking about requiring pervious driveways and patios and the drainage that comes off the roof. We're always,
Yeah,
With dry wells.
You
Dry
guys are always
wells.
regulating dry wells, but there's nothing in our rules and regulations
That
about
says-
them. I mean, again, that's not something we need to
That's a
prepare
rules-
for fall town
yeah,
meeting,
that's a
but
rule and regulation.
Rule and
Yeah.
We must
regulation.
allow for alternative ways of redirecting water off of a solid structure.
we're going with a focus on coastal resilience, correct?
no,
Wetland sustainability with focus on wildlife and groundwater. Restoration, not just a $300 slap in the hand.
We can't do much of it. Restorations are, we have the ability to have them restore it. We don't have the ability to change our fee.
Correct, but
Our
I
fine.
think restoring, we need to start focusing more on,
Yep.
because we don't do that. But we haven't in the past.
Oh, we've done some big ones.
Once in a while.
Oh, no, some big ones. A whole slope got stripped, it all had to be rebuilt.
In the last, oh, okay.
is this down here on set?
Onset.
No.
No, in
Overlooking
downtown.
Buzzards Bay.
Oh,
He wanted to see the water flow or wash up on the shore, so he stripped his whole bank.
That's nice.
We don't do it as often as we should.
Yeah, I don't think we have enough clout
need a-
when it comes to,
Enforcement?
yeah.
And the viability of
These are
that,
really way too low.
and the viability of that restoration. If they put it in and it doesn't last a year, we should have something that it should be able to be viable for a longer period of time.
yeah, and that's something we can address in our rules and regulations. You know,
regulations.
2 or 3 growing seasons, or, have to be planted at a specific time. And
Like kind.
I believe we can make those perpetual conditions that those
Mhm.
areas be, maintained in perpetuity.
Do we also state that our hay bales and our socks, indoor socks, whatever we use, contain a no seed certification?
You haven't in the past, but again, that's a
Rule and
regulation
regulation.
that we can.
So part of what we need to do is, do we really need hay bales or straw bales? Are there other alternatives on the market now that are just
Socks.
efficient to maintain erosion control? Because that hay bale or straw, one of them contains seed and the other one doesn't, and I always get the
Hay
two.
has seed. Straw
Yeah.
doesn't.
Because they
When it
always,
rots, it's awful.
I mean, to me, that's all part of rules and regulation,
Okay.
not a bylaw change.
I did notice that a lot of towns are using the socks, using the
They've
contained
switched over
wattles,
to sock,
and
yeah.
They seem to be more effective
Some
than
of them
just
can
hay
be,
bales and
some of them
straw
can be very big.
If they're installed properly too.
The same
Yeah.
thing with the hay bales. Yeah. In Swiss Beach, they all washed away.
bales. Right.
Did we talk about good cause revoking of orders of conditions? being defined and the steps to be taken?
I'm not,
Revoking an order of condition.
Right, if something good call, for some reason or other, we need to revoke an order of conditions.
That's enforcement is
Yeah,
defined under the
yeah,
Residence
so-
Protection
thank you,
Act.
Ken.
Yeah.
Sure.
If someone's doing something that's against the order of conditions, we can write them a fine, or, I mean, you know, if they do it and then they come back for their certificate of compliance, that's when we can force them to do the right thing as well.
Again, that would be rules and regulations.
How about the no activity zone signs and the delineation that we've started to include? Is that going to rules and regulations also?
Yep, that'd be a rules and
Performance
regulations.
standards.
Okay. Pervious we talked about. No project to be considered and/or approved, etc., if there is an outstanding violation, fee, or taxes exist. We don't include that, and a lot of the other boards, I think, do. If they have an outstanding tax, fee, or violation, then their application is
Are
not.
you talking generally planning or zoning or both? Just planning?
I don't know if it's just planning or it's both zoning, I just,
I wish Ken hadn't just walked out.
yeah. But,
But you see other towns enforcing that, saying, here, you can't, we can't.
there's an
give you-"
outstanding, well, like with that dock came up that got revoked the past meeting, there was an outstanding violation for that property.
Yes.
And we were considering a dock for that property. I don't think we should have been considering it if there was an outstanding violation.
And part of that is that the land is owned by the church.
Well,
which is-
Right,
that's,
That
yes,
makes
but it's,
complication.
That's an
But-
interesting scenario that is only gonna happen on that one property, I believe.
Yeah,
but there's,
But
but there's,
are other towns doing it where if you have outstanding
Yes.
violations, you cannot apply for something new?
Yeah, it's included in the notice of intent, local notice of intent
okay.
packet
Okay.
is a fees. You have to submit a form to the finance department with the property, parcel lot ID and address and owner, and then they will scan it back to you whether or not there's a lien or outstanding taxes unpaid on the property, and that's considered part of the completion of the application for submission.
Can we include something like that, Norris?
Yeah, absolutely.
in your rules and regulations.
Yeah.
Oh, yep,
So we have the ability to force applicants to submit electronically, but if someone comes with a, you know, a mailed-in application, we have to accept it still, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and that's the state will be
Yeah.
making the final decision on that.
Yeah, because we have the OpenGov viewpoint system in town that I've been trying to, you know, do a lot with. And, you know, maybe that would be a way to get other boards or committees involved, you know, such as if there's an outstanding fine or tax fee or something, you know, requiring them to sign off on our application.
Yeah, we don't have that at this point, do we? Can we
What?
have?
The sign off of that, yeah, and
Of
that
different
would,
departments.
that would be under the rules and
Rules
regulations.
and regulations. How about addressing the turtle sanctuaries and allowing them in the no activity zones? Do we need to incorporate
We've already
something?
allowed
We've,
it.
yeah, we've already done that.
Okay.
Josh
Does
is
that
our,
include those?
Do we
yeah,
have
Josh is our turtle warrant.
Okay, and then with our standard order of conditions, do we have somebody sign off or actually initial that they've read them?
They have to record it at the registry of deeds.
They do.
Yeah, normally that's done by the engineer who you mail it back to. So I think your concern is that, you know, someone applies for a project, the engineer, you know, takes them through the notice of intent, and then they have some type of contractor doing the actual building
Right.
who, you know, violates the order of conditions. And the problem is that, oh, I didn't know it existed. Whether they're being honest about that or they did know it existed and chose not to do it. Again, if they're violating the order of conditions, we can fine them. Or,
Are you triggered on building permit applications?
yes,
Yeah, so usually you can ask the applicant for the building permit to upload the proof of recording of the order of conditions with the registry stamp on it.
yeah.
And then you know the building permit holder also has a copy of the order of conditions. And then you can comment in OpenGov, please call for a pre-construction meeting. And you can require the pre-construction meeting in your special conditions under both the act and your bylaw, and put that in your regulations. And that's where you go out and say, you have a copy of the order of conditions, or you have it on your screen or whatever, and say, okay, well, let's read this together.
Have you seen many municipalities enforcing the extension of an order of conditions or the filing of a certificate of compliance?
No.
And if they don't, do they fine them?
No.
This commission has years of orders of conditions where part of their conditions where you come for an extension or you come for a certificate of compliance or you may be fined.
Yeah, it's a may, not
Yeah.
a shall.
Yeah.
That was rolled out about 25 years ago in a lot of language for conservation commissions, but the actual discovery of outstanding orders of conditions didn't really begin to happen until after the market crash and rebuild in 2014, 2015. And title attorneys started to do a lot more work around parcels and parcel history and deed research before allowing a property to be transferred. And since then, tens of thousands of orders of conditions that were recorded and never closed have prevented real estate transactions.
Oh, we have
Up and down the Commonwealth.
80% of my
Yeah.
basement is filled with applications that have not received a certificate of
Right,
compliance.
right.
And,
And you can do a public outreach effort to communicate to those parcel owners, like, hey, you have a clouded title because
Right.
there is an order of conditions on the parcel, it has not been closed. The first may or may not be recorded at the registry of deeds, but even if it is not, it is still attached to your title on the parcel, and you need to solve this problem. But it's similar to trying to license every single dock, pier, and float.
nearly
Which one do you want to do
impossible.
first?
Nearly
You know?
impossible.
You know, and it's a public service to do that for people because it does become a problem for them when they want to sell
Right.
both the dock, pier, float licensing issue and the outstanding order issue because they cloud the title, right? But that's not something I would necessarily take on in language in your bylaw or your regulations. It's something that, you know, if you really felt like doing a major Good Samaritan lift in the community,
I don't have time for the Samaritan lift.
yeah, then,
You have to go down and see the basement.
What we found is that there are times in which it was 2 homeowners removed.
oh, absolutely. Oh, it could be,
Right, cash
I mean-
sale, no one looks into the title.
yeah, oh, it could be dozens and dozens and dozens, and
We have-
subdivisions of like whole, you know, neighborhoods.
We have a
Yeah.
property in which the order of conditions expired, they did not ask for an extension, and our prior agent said if you want it, you come before us for a brand new order of conditions.
Yeah,
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
and he
that's,
said no, and we said fine.
no
And you
order,
don't, no order.
yeah,
So if you want to sell, your order of conditions are not
valid, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's not valid, it's true.
so.
so one thing our commission has kicked around is actually fining people for having invalid orders or, you know, expired orders of conditions. But you're not seeing that in other municipalities?
No, I mean, I just don't think that, I think your fines would be appealed. It would be very difficult to, yeah, that would be very difficult to execute. Because you can't fine, I mean, you wouldn't be able to levy fines on homeowners that didn't open those orders of conditions, right? Because they're not necessarily responsible for the fact that they didn't read their entire mortgage. You know?
Yeah.
And so then to like have somebody come at them and say like, now we're gonna fine you because 4 people before you, it's just, that's not even good optics for the Conservation Commission,
Right.
right? Now, if people come before you and they have an outstanding order of conditions on the site, then you can say, please, you know, submit a request or certificate of compliance. We can go out and take a look at the site before you are submitting this order of conditions. And that you may consider as part of your rules and regs of what is a complete application,
Right.
right? Proof of,
Closure of other.
yeah, of clarity on the title,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
So where are there places historically that the commission has felt we need more jurisdiction, or you would like to see more protection?
Solar fields.
Solar, I was gonna say the same thing, solar, absolutely.
The state has really restricted us.
Yeah.
Use of nitrogen fertilizers.
Yes.
I know the order of conditions says it, but how do we prove that it happened? With low yield,
Yeah.
slow releasing
release, yeah.
nitrogen.
Core samples and have them tested.
I mean, it's one of those things that
Yeah.
some of our people have this lush green, how do they do it without nitrogen?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there are some conditions that the commission has that may just be impossible to enforce
Yes,
at times.
We tried quite a few years ago to put in a bylaw regarding nitrogen, like, what did Vineyard did or Nantucket did or something like that, but there was no way to enforce it.
Like
That-
even I look
that
at some
happens.
of, our current bylaw, and I don't know if the expectation is for me to go out and measure, the lowest member of a boat to the bottom of the water body, but it's one of those things that makes sense, when you think about it, but very hard to accomplish in practicality.
We just want to protect what we have. And Wareham has so much in terms of waterfront and lakefront, and I mean, we've got it all. Wetlands out the wazoo,
A lot of
Just
forests too.
yes. Try and protect it.
What did you say?
A lot of forests.
Forests.
Forest.
Well, a lot of forested area, like in West Wareham,
Yeah, but we can't, unless it's around a water body, there's nothing we
well,
can do
there's
about
still-
that.
there's still streams and,
Yeah, as
waters
long as
like
there's
that.
water bodies, we have a say.
I would like to see us be able to expand our
Our jurisdiction.
regulations for how close they can be to a waterway, whether it's a river or a stream, or it's, so that they're not, because if you're impacting a stream, that's gonna impact a river, which is gonna impact the ocean. We're so lenient on that stuff in some ways, that it's not acceptable. It's gonna do major damage, and once it's done, we can't undo it.
I think that's part of
So-
the statement of jurisdiction, will be expanding that.
Right, you're
With better
thinking
definition.
of intermittent streams.
I'm thinking of everything. For example, the Faring Hill project.
Right.
Because it will impact both the Weeweeantic and the Sippican watersheds, it's on a hilltop, and it's gonna have major impacts down the road if they win the battle and get to build the solar field.
We denied the project because it was about, what, 300 square feet within our jurisdiction?
Yeah,
Down at the bottom of the hill going
Just-
into the wetland, and we
Yeah, I'll
denied
catch you
it.
up, because you may not be familiar with this.
Right.
There was a solar project that was proposed in the upland, but pretty steep banks down to the Weeweeantic River and
Into our conservation land,
into the
yeah, up
conservation.
abutting to our conservation
Right.
land.
So basically, the conversation to the applicant was, hey, you have 300 feet or square feet worth of work in our jurisdiction. If you move it out, you really don't even have to come before us. They decided that they'd rather take us to court over it. So
Wow,
we're-
really?
We're
Yep.
currently.
How large was the property?
huge.
How many acres
Pretty large.
It was
was
huge.
Faring Hill? You know,
The parcel they want to clear, the clear part of it is either 20 or 25. They can't clear 10 of it because it's already wetlands in the back. They can't clear
That's
them
part of
out.
the 40 acres.
So and
Is it
it's-
their only frontage for a road or something?
they had enough.
Yeah. And so they,
Just felt like it.
and it was really only stormwater management that was within our jurisdiction,
Mhm.
and they refused to remove it. And, we're currently they haven't issued a superseding order of conditions for Mass DEP yet, but we are still in court.
What were the terms for the denial?
Oh.
We don't have it yet, do we?
No, that you wrote.
No, that we
Dave
wrote.
wrote the denial.
Yeah.
It was,
I don't remember off the top of my head.
I don't, it was
And
because
project
it was
could
such a
not
I'll
small,
send it to you.
It could not be conditioned in such a way or something?
Yeah,
Okay.
something along
it was
those
such a
lines.
small piece of the whole project.
But then it was going into the wetlands, and then the wetlands were
Right.
gonna
Right.
impact
Because
the
what they were
river.
doing
going
was they
to-
were.
The prior
taking-
agent wrote the denial. I'll send it to you. so you can look
Have
it
it.
over. I would like to acknowledge that we have 2 members of the Wareham Land Trust here.
Oh,
The Wareham Land Trust owns hundreds, thousands?
Total acreage we're responsible for, part through fee, part through conservation restrictions, is 680.
oh, great, good for
We
you.
just signed for the Sawyer parcel last Thursday, week ago. So now we own that.
You wanna get paid for it? I haven't seen the bill yet.
She's compiling all the
Oh,
receipts.
Great.
While you've been sitting here in our meeting, is there anything you guys would like to add? Is there,
I feel bad, I agree with Mike and Denise said, you know, I understand the forests are out of your protection, but they're being slaughtered.
But the fact that there's not any kind of real protection of those intermittent streams, the smaller water bodies, the rivers and lakes. So anything that can be done to add buffer zones around those areas would be enormous.
Because didn't the federal government hold back on that if the water bodies weren't connected?
Yeah, that's what I was saying before the Sackler decision pulled it back so that isolated vegetated wetlands and any resource that does not show hydrology, superficial hydrology is no longer protected. So that's vernal pools and the headlands of a lot of waterways and anything under the size of.
Well, not in a forested area, it was over a cranberry bog, or near a cranberry bog, the Route Zero solar panel that we had approved, but it was kind of close to a river. And I was against the project, I think I voted against it. But anyway, that's either near or there. And did the state come back and say that they actually disapproved or actually denied the
Well,
project?
they-
Because of the portion that was close to the river?
They presented it to us, we told them our restrictions, they pulled the request from us.
Okay,
Redid the plan, so their whole solar field is outside of our jurisdiction.
correct.
So that's where it is now, it's in front of planning, being another solar field, clearing all the trees. But they were smart enough to pull it out of what we could control,
Right.
Okay,
which is what we were surprised Fairing Hill didn't do that.
Right.
correct.
Yeah.
All right.
That feels hypocritical to me.
Oh,
It was, yeah, it was weird, but,
but
so,
Can I have just one more thought would be to reiterate or strengthen the bog wetland connection. So because Wareham, in addition to having all of the coastline and the small streams, obviously has lots of cranberry bogs, you know, so the jurisdiction in and around the bogs is huge, especially
Yeah.
now that they're talking
And
about
that is
floating
included.
solar.
So one of the
Or
conditions we
solar.
had, because we consider the bogs wetlands, we denied a project of solar panels over a bog, and we lost in court.
Solar.
That's
Yeah.
because the state restricted us.
Hmm?
The state has restricted us a lot on
The solar.
using the dual usage
Oh.
of properties, and they considered a bog as being dual usage.
Yep. So we were very disappointed that we lost that battle. Yeah, bogs, I would like to see us be stronger in our rules and regulations regarding because the bogs are all surrounded by water. Water's come from somewhere.
then they eventually flow out into Buzzards Bay at some
Yeah.
point, yeah.
I thought we had that we couldn't significantly change or do something within, and the word bogs was in there, and they still denied us being able to control it.
Because the state wants solar,
Right.
correct?
Yeah. It's really hard to.
You know, if they could come up with a comprehensive explanation for decommissioning these sites and what they're gonna do with all these panels and these lithium-ion batteries, it doesn't tell me we're gonna turn this into a nuclear waste dump, I'd be happy. So I am so completely against electric cars and solar because of that. And nobody, you ask the question and nobody has an answer, they kind of just skirt around it because they don't know. And that scares me, what's gonna
I
happen
think part of it
20,
is more
25, 30 years
infrastructure.
from now when these solar fields are no longer operational.
I think the planning board is trying to address that too.
Yep.
Sandy, you've been on the board longer than anyone. Do you feel that there were prior commissioners who've had issues with the goals that the commission could, meet that were, lacking from regulations? Like, have you seen commissioners leave because they felt like our regulations weren't strong enough
No,
to accomplish?
we had an extremely strong board when Doug Westgate was our chair, and very, I don't remember going to court like we're doing now, but no, I can't think of anything in which we felt it shouldn't have happened, but we didn't have the strength to deny it. I can't think of, not off the top of my head. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, pretty much.
I don't remember.
You've been here long enough that if there was a commissioner who was just, aggravated and really wanted to get out because they felt like, the board couldn't accomplish
No,
something they wanted
other than
to
the
do.
selectmen getting rid of one, failing to deny them reappointment. But I mean, big issues we have is, we try to tell all our applicants, do not start any work until you get the paperwork from Josh. We had one group who got the approval on Wednesday, they cleared the land on Saturday and Sunday. Because they didn't even wait for the 21-day appeal process that the neighbor was going to appeal. So I don't know how to control that other than tell everybody, don't start work.
Can we find that?
I mean, yeah, that's enforceable. Yeah, there's something on your end that you can do is not issue the permit until
They didn't
21
care.
days have
But,
passed.
they just don't care, they'll just start
They just did.
bulldozing them.
Yeah, they have to have the
property.
permit in hand
What
and
was
have
it?
it recorded.
They
or
got
they're
the
subject to
approval on
enforcement.
Wednesday night.
And they had it cleared by the
next
weekend.
Monday it was done.
It was a
Right.
30-foot path to the water
Wow, they wanted it,
through wetland.
wow.
I mean, so once you guys make a decision, I have 21 days to get
Yeah.
Get it
We'll
to
give
the
you 20
applicant.
days for any type of
And
appeal.
then after that postmark day, there's a 10-day appeal period.
Right, so really applicants shouldn't be doing any work from the date that I send it out, plus 10 days.
Okay.
We try very hard to say to them,
Yeah.
We tell everybody, don't start any work until you get the paperwork from Josh.
Right.
And they just do what they wanna do.
this,
Well, there's
Normally
only a
when they come
slap
into
on the
my-
hand even with the fines. I mean, there's
Normally, they come into
nothing
my
there to-
office, get the paperwork, and then I tell them, yeah,
got
you got a 10-day appeal period, so.
and your choice is if you do the work now, you may have to undo it with the appeal.
Right, but if they take down,
Yeah, I
40
know.
full-grown trees.
Right.
Yeah, But this,
you can't.
this 30-foot piece of path to the water, it's surrounded by cameras on both owners. The owner of the 30-foot and the owner next to them, and you know who I'm talking about. Clemmy. It's,
Oh. We are being televised live.
yes, there is a,
So-
that is a
But not-
big issue down in that area
Yeah.
regarding that access into the water. That's the only time I've known somebody to do the work before they had the paperwork.
Yeah.
I don't know how to control it.
I mean, you let the
If we
fines.
find it, then we owe $300, but that wouldn't have done.
Enough, yeah.
Right.
Can we set our own fines, or is that done by
No.
the state?
Oh, your ordinance fines, you may decide whatever you want, your bylaw fines.
We're not limited to the state?
Oh, no,
Oh,
yeah,
I always
no,
thought
no.
we were.
Oh, I find
anything you want,
Oh, I think we,
have a
And we
fun
need to
day.
address-
Oh, no.
we need to
You
address
don't know what you
fines.
did.
yes, she does. I'm sorry, there needs to
Because
be.
I was
No,
always.
I-
it's your fee schedule, it's your fine schedule,
Yeah, I-
you do what you
I'm
want.
being facetious, I mean, it is a good thing.
If there are no consequences, people are gonna continue to do whatever they want to do, regardless of what the law is, because
Yeah.
once they've done it, what are you gonna, it's like, nah, 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 what are you gonna do?
And when you require restoration, that's supposed to be where they end up incurring the greater cost.
Right.
I mean, there are
How
some
do you
communities
enforce
where
that?
enforcement will include placing a lien on the title.
I mean,
Until
I
fines are
think
paid.
enforcement has to really be
I like
much
that.
stronger than what we have now.
Yeah.
I can think of only once that when we charged somebody $300 a day and were able to implement that until the work was corrected. But that, once in how many years I've been on?
I know we threatened somebody with it.
Mm.
But yeah,
Okay.
if we're
In the
not
past 3
restricted
years.
on what we can do, I think we should really
We need to
revisit.
take a really good look at our fines then, if we're
Yeah.
not limited to the $300.
Be quite high as long as it's.
That's a third warrant article.
Anyway,
But if it's our rules and regulations, it doesn't have to be a warrant article, because we have approved, we have,
I mean, you can do that on the 6th, right? Because that's what we're limited to, fines and fees,
Right.
or go to maybe just fees, but.
I mean, I don't think it should be outrageous money to apply to do, you know, put in a dock, or put a solar field in your backyard, or, you know, anything.
but I always
It
thought
should
we
be
were limited to
reasonable.
the state. We can exceed what the state charges for a fee.
Fines.
Fines,
Fines.
Not a fee.
fines.
Now, would restoration, would that come under fines?
No.
Yeah, I mean, you can strengthen your enforcement language so that it is a shall, you shall restore.
Okay.
Yeah. But importantly, you will have to come up with performance standards for the definition of restoration in not only the definition, but also in your regulations, so that you're not leaving it open for anybody to decide what restoration is.
Didn't we have an issue with not having standards? You used the words.
I mean, we should have performance standards
We did
for
not
all
have
our
performance
jurisdictions.
standards, which was why we lost a court case. I don't think we
I
have
mean-
performance standards.
That might have been before Josh.
Oh, of course it was.
Everything.
A lot of things were.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what judges look at is when we deny something based off of our bylaw, they look at, you know, why we denied it, and then they look at what performance standards are associated with it. If we don't have any performance standards that are more restrictive than the Wetlands Protection Act, that's what the judge is going to look at.
And that's in our bylaw, as opposed to our rules and
Would-
regulations.
Would performance standards be,
Those are your regs.
those are the
Okay.
regs, okay.
I'm a happy girl.
And I imagine a lot of our performance standards will mimic the Wetland Protection Act.
Right, in a lot of cases. It's where you're going to separately define your jurisdiction or expand your jurisdiction that you're considering performance standards.
Right.
And again, you're limited in some cases by the state statute of, you know, performance standards for an expanded floodway. Essentially, all you can do is require that it be included in the mapping and overlay, and also that you produce an alternatives analysis. For example, for an applicant, you can't actually require a change in the design, similar to land subject to coastal storm flowage, right? Because you're restricted by the standards of the building code in that case, for example. Also true is if you were to get into stormwater, you can't be altering what is considered, you know, the state and federal statutes for stormwater. But you can increase your jurisdiction on stormwater management. So there are some communities where they consider any lot larger than 10,000 square feet jurisdictional to stormwater performance standards, you know, the same performance standards in the DEP, which is to say that those properties must recharge all of their stormwater on site. a quarter acre or larger. We see that a lot in metro areas where there's a lot smaller lots impervious surface. So
Even if it's not up against the wetland, we could put that in our statement of jurisdiction, that, okay, everybody, even if you're in the middle of the woods, you have to give yourself a recharge your
get a
rainwater.
stormwater permit, yeah.
I think that's working with planning and zoning. You
Yeah.
know, if we.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
they
have
might already have,
You probably, I'm sure you have an MS4, and it depends who the administrator is of that MS4 permit. It's probably the planning board. However, sometimes it's written in there as, or their liaison,
right.
you know, so in those cases, that's, yeah, you're absolutely right. Working with the planning board, the interest, the desire to do that, planning board level too. Yeah. Or assignee is what they'll write, yeah.
So you're gonna be sending us this whole statement of jurisdiction.
I'll give you jurisdictional options. I think
Yeah.
on the subject of solar, the most effective jurisdictional option that I have seen is any slope grade greater than 8% requires an 800-foot buffer zone, or a 500-foot buffer zone.
Which probably would have been your Prairie Hill property.
Right, you would have captured all that upland area, and then in that 500-foot buffer zone, you set forth performance standards for tree removal, stormwater.
I like this. We're going to get, we'll take a look at all the jurisdictions and go at it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the most effective way, I think, to try to protect forested upland. And also establishing a buffer zone for perennial streams, or intermittent streams. Headwaters
Have you
and
seen any other
intermittent
towns
streams.
with that same bog issue?
Bogs,
With bogs and solar panels, that is, because.
nobody likes them, nobody can really get around them.
What do you mean? What do you mean by get around them? You mean put the panels up atop the bogs, or you mean?
No, I mean, it's very hard to say no to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I have not, I can certainly look again, and there is some kind of recent discussion about it, but it's so heavily
Because I
promoted.
can't think of any other town around here with a whole lot of bogs like us.
Well, Carver.
Carver.
Remember Carver, they,
Carver had that joint project with
well,
us,
Carver permitted it.
which is the one we lost, right?
No, another bog, they permitted it with metal support beams, and they put in pressure-treated wood. And it took a long time for that to, because it was already in the
bad.
ground, it took a long time to remove it.
Yeah,
Because they
Yeah.
permitted one thing and
This-
they installed the
This is on
pressure-treated beams.
58, right?
Right on 58.
Yeah, they're like telephone poles.
Yeah.
I think you
exactly.
can, I think that you can require they be elevated a certain distance above the bog, but I don't think that you can force a design of the array that would require it to be like a matrix, for example,
Right.
elevated matrix. I don't think that you can.
Well, they
Or
have
I'm
to
not
be-
aware of it, I haven't heard of that.
They have to be elevated in order to do the harvesting.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, they absolutely do,
Right,
yeah.
but even the Cranberry Coalition was against it because of the yields you get.
Right.
They already know it affects it, but, oh, let's slap them up there anyway.
Right.
Well, that's because of the state's dual usage
Dual
The
usage.
state
program that
wants
they
Prerogative.
solar.
I mean, the dual usage stated it couldn't be any bigger than 2 megawatts, and the judge permitted a 3 megawatt
Right.
outside of the dual usage
Exactly.
requirements.
Yeah, it makes it hard when the courts
Not working with you.
aren't working within what the parameters are of a project.
Yeah, because then they're making a prior authorization too in Superior.
Right, and everybody else is, now it's
Right.
precedent, so everybody's gonna sue and get bigger.
It's frustrating.
So how's everyone feeling about this meeting?
Good.
Good.
So far, so good.
Are we
I think we're moving in,
confused about
six.
anything?
I think we're moving in
Are
a
we-
positive direction for the
Okay.
town.
Okay,
Now,
Because it isn't about us, it's about protecting the town.
so
and
should
its
we,
resources.
you're right.
we've got right now 2 articles, 2 warrant articles that we're going to put in. Should we put in a third one indicating our desire to remove rules and regulations out of the bylaws?
I don't know if I would
do that?
Highlight it.
Okay.
I
Do
think
we have the right to do that without going before town meeting, or does that have to go before town meeting?
it's in your
Right,
bylaw. And
we're
you're also gonna
limited
be
in
striking, I mean, it's just by way of doing this, you have a bylaw, right, and it's a certain length. By way of removing the regulations from the bylaw and creating them as a separate document, we will be striking a whole lot of what's on the backside of that bylaw. So the bylaw itself will become much smaller and simpler, and will be focused strictly on standard language for definitions and jurisdiction. And then, please see later the regulatory document, right? Which is administered singly by the Conservation Commission. So the markup is going to be pretty large, what it's actually going to look like on the document, because we'll be striking a whole bunch of language and adding a whole bunch of language in the definitions. And how that, I mean, I think maybe we all need to see what that looks like to try to think about how that's going to be received at town meeting. I think it's worthwhile to submit the whole thing and leave it to town meeting to decide how much they care to pick it apart. Because if it's got, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 pages of definitions on the front of it, then maybe that's all anybody wants to read,
Right, right.
Talk about
So
strategy, sure.
Will you give us a draft article?
Yeah.
And how you think we should present it to town meeting?
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is that you should go forward with one
Okay.
and ask them at the town meeting, the delegates at town meeting, to decide to strike matters if they so choose. But otherwise, largely this is an administrative effort to modernize the bylaw and make it possible for the commission to do their work in an efficient manner. And that's what I would say. I wouldn't really suggest that you're attempting to do anything other than bring more clarity to the work that you do and make it more communicable to the community.
You got all those buzzwords?
When you say that's what you would try to communicate, is
I mean,
that
that's-
you trying to communicate?
That's what
at
I would
town meeting?
communicate. Yeah, absolutely.
You would
Yeah.
communicate? Okay.
Yeah.
There we go. She
That's-
has all the buzzwords.
I don't do that communicating. Yeah,
Okay, the fourth Monday in October at 7 o'clock.
yeah, I'm already on for it, so.
Perfect.
But right now, we're talking 2 articles.
I think just one.
No. It's jurisdiction, I thought that was gonna be a separate article.
It's up to you. I mean, you're gonna be, again, when we get a chance to really look at the red line, what you'll be doing is submitting a red line document of the bylaw with definitions and then removing the regs. And then you'd be submitting another red line document with jurisdiction. And I don't think that changes in town meeting the way the matter is discussed. Because the point of town meeting is that they have the opportunity to review the entire article and decide what they would prefer to strike or change or add before making the approval. So the expectation is you're going to be able to upgrade the bylaw regardless by way of approval, and the dialogue that you will be having with the individuals who are serving as the delegates at town meeting is the place where you say, do you love it, do you hate it, do you want to keep it, do you want it to go?
We're not a delegate, we're individual homeowners
Who
for
are-
town meeting.
And there are no,
No.
representatives?
Nope.
It's how many people usually come to town meeting?
Well,
Depends if there's a hot button issue.
Yeah, if there's a
varies.
hot button issue, you can load town meeting.
we have a 0 quorum,
Oh, cool.
but we could get, it depends on they said it depends on the topic, whether or not, normally we don't get much more than maybe 150, 200.
Yeah.
The last article, the last town meeting we had 88, and they turned down a major sewer project.
Is that sewer project gonna be on our fall town meeting?
Oh my God, I hope so.
Probably.
Okay.
We need
It's a $36 million upgrade to,
clarifiers and headworks. We have to have it.
right.
You have to do it.
So, if that article is presented before our wetland bylaw, there may be a lot of residents that,
No, keep in mind, our articles are chosen by random,
oh, that's right.
so
Well,
whatever.
but still, if it comes
whatever
before
the-
ours, there
Yeah.
could be a lot of town meeting members who leave.
Yeah, so it
So,
depends on what
it could
what
be
the ping pong,
interesting, yeah.
the bingo ball comes up with first, so.
Do you read the entire article?
FinCom usually says it's as printed in the warrant.
So, the warrant is due September 18th. I think FinCom reaches out to all of the committees to, get an idea of what they are presenting, or if there's an
Yep.
article submitted, that kind of presentation to FinCom before the town meeting.
Okay. So there will be something to the BOS and something to the FinCom, because BOS can say whether or not an article can go on the warrant.
Mm-hmm.
They are a gatekeeper to the warrant,
And
so.
that's why I left 2 meetings for me to kind of give them a rundown of what's
Okay.
going on, so
Now,
they can
is
feel
it-
comfortable with what we're presenting.
Is it just FinCom and the selectmen that we get support from for an article?
They're the, and and the commission, because it says selectmen are in favor when the vote is, FinCom is in favor and whatever the vote is, and the Conservation Commission voted
Okay.
to support this article.
And
But being in favor doesn't mean,
Make sure that they're on board.
Eventually, yeah.
it doesn't
They
always
set
hold.
the schedule for it.
Oh, yeah, well, it means in favor of taking it to town meeting,
No.
not necessarily in favor.
No, take
In
it,
favor.
take
Favor
it
of
in
taking
favor
the
of the article
At town meeting?
at town meeting.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Presentation?
yeah.
Yeah, so
Yes.
the selectmen, like we did with that 36 million, the selectmen said we're not in favor because we don't know the total cost of revamping the whole water pollution control facility, and therefore, we don't want you approving your 36 million. So we're another 6 months delayed in getting that project work done. I know, I've got a sewer commissioners
We
meeting
do,
coming up.
it is 6 o'clock, we have the meeting room till 6:30. Do you feel like we've
I have
hit
a lot
good
of great,
wrapping point, or?
yep, I have a lot of great information from everybody. This has been really helpful to be oriented to the concerns of the commission. And the only thing I want to think about is,
I also think that if there's anything that you feel that we are missing, I mean, you're obviously more in tune to what's going on in towns around us, that if you think there's something that we're not looking at that we should be, please bring it to our attention.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one thing I think that is becoming more and more common is the discussion around climate resilience or climate change resilience or climate adaptation, and making sure that that's really incorporated so that the groundwork is laid for future efforts. The other thing that is also coming in more and more is climate equity and environmental justice. So showing an overlay area, if you have census tract, EJ census tract areas, being able to show that as part of an application, and having sort of strengthened performance standards for any work or activities that are going to negatively impact anybody in that overlay area. That's another thing that is kind of coming in more and more. Again, the floodplain overlay, which is attached to climate resilience and climate equity and environmental justice, is really leading edge stuff. But there's definitely standard language out there, and we can incorporate it if it's something that we think that the commission is in support of and can manage. I don't know how, I did not look at the EJ for Wareham, so I don't know how much distribution there is of it. But I know, and it's like a double-edged sword. It's like once you lay it out there, then you're like really facing it. So you have to have some kind of preparedness for that. But it is definitely in the future, and it's certainly in the future of any and all planning efforts that are coming down the line. So something to keep in mind for that too.
Yeah, it'd be nice not to put a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage.
Yeah.
We have to look to the future.
Right?
It's not gonna just be okay. We have to do something now while we have the opportunity, and we have to think creatively. Because I want your kids' to be able to live in Wareham and have it be a nice, small coastal town instead of having it be underwater. It's not easy. People want that instant gratification stuff.
Yeah.
They don't want to think about the future.
Right.
We have to.
Final thoughts, anybody?
We've covered a lot.
Great.
Yeah, this has been very
Good.
good, a lot of good information.
Definitely feel good.
So if this is it, I'll take a motion to adjourn. I call this a meeting or workshop or whatever we have to, but I need a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the meeting?
Second. 6:02. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.